Hola Emilia.
Hola,
Emilia, de momento solo estás tú, no he dejado entrar a nadie más. Estamos terminando algunas cositas en el backstage. ¿Me oyes bien?
sí, te oigo bien y
Vale,
perfecto.
perfecto.
Esperemos un poquito hasta que tengamos otra gente también.
Tenemos en espera. Emilia, ¿alguien ha entrado? Vale, nada. Tenemos 37 personas en espera. Un segundo. Mm, Emilia, le he dicho a los de la sala de espera que empezamos en unos minutos. Emilia,
Pablo
tenemos...
te está pidiendo entrada, ¿no, José?
Ya ha entrado, ya ha entrado. Emilia, tenemos 59 personas en sala de espera. Le digo, le
Pues
doy la señal.
yo os diría que podemos ya empezar a dejar entrar de a una, ¿no? Y ponemos la cortinilla, que empiecen a entrar y después tomas tú, me introduces a mí
Sí,
y vamos
súper.
con eso.
Voy a ver al equipo porque no paro de oír el ruido de fondo y no sé si es que lo están testeando aún. Y en cuanto vuelva, dejo entrar, ¿vale?
¿Ok?
Ya estoy. Voy a dejar entrar, colegas. Cortinilla lista, ¿me avisáis?
Commons, the finance, the trust, as key enablers, not only to implement the pact at the local level, but to transform the international power landscape.
So a shared vulnerability, a shared opportunity to take risks is one way, as Emilia said, to rebuild those relationships and take down some of those power dynamics.
Question again the basics of economy and finance.
And I think that's the real shift that I've seen in the last 10 years. We didn't have a discourse that was dealing about caring, sharing, solidarity, feminist politics.
There will be no human rights or social justice. There will be no right to the city or democracy without the commons.
We're talking about changing the power of me to the power of we.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Good morning to those of you who are in the Americas, and welcome to the Future Envisioning Exercise on the Building Blocks of Peace. This is the first of these exercises that we are doing this year, so I'm going to go through a brief reminder before we start of the point of the exercise and of the development of the session, let's say. So first of all, we will be setting the scene, discussing with our Secretary General how and why the purpose of the exercise, why are we addressing the building blocks of peace, and what this relates to the municipal movement, followed by an introduction by our entry points, which will be partners of United Cities and local governments, but also the political leadership of UCLG, who will touch upon the more political agenda of the World Organization and its relation to the international processes around peace. Following this, we will have a moment for partners who will present their contributions, and then we will bring a partner organization to develop and focus their work on throughout the year. In the end, to close up the exercise, we will have an Agora meeting with exchanges with participants in the organization, and that will allow us to add these outcomes to our own agenda moving forward. So this is more or less the development of the exercise. I'm going now to give the floor to our Secretary General, Emilia Saiz, to provide the opening framework for the exercise. So please, Emilia, whenever you're ready. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Jose, and welcome everyone. Thank you to the members of the UCLG presidency, to the partners and special envoys that are joining us today. It's a well-nurtured group. We didn't expect so many participants. It's really good to kick off the year in this kind of exercise. So very grateful that everybody has joined us today. And on the one hand, I find it very exciting. On the other hand, I feel the pressure that I am certain that all of you are feeling of the international context being as complex as it is, and this agenda for peace being also a very challenging topic, actually. The reason why we have wanted to address this and to start the year with our partners around this topic is because when we were looking at the inputs of local and regional governments in the summit for the future, when we were looking at the future agendas, we were conceiving the new agenda for peace that the UN Secretary General was asking us to consider. as a very important instrument to rethink the multilateral system, in particular the governance and the decision making. But that process was not fed by the vision of the world that we are going through today. There were conflicts, very heavy conflicts, very difficult conflicts, but we were not seeing a world where wars were taking the shape and the impact and the outreach that they are having today. It was a different moment. And this is what led us to discuss with our partners, with partners that have been working on this for a very long time, on the peace agenda that has been at the heart of the creation of our municipal movement in 1913, to start developing the components of this peace agenda together with the perspective of the role that local and regional governments will need to play. And this is a difficult exercise. It's not a simple exercise. Because of course, when we talk about peace embodies everything and embodies some of the most critical issues that we need to go through. Without peace, there is nothing else. There is certainly not development, but it is very hard to look at the peace agenda and the multilateral system agenda without looking at the member states' approach to this question. And so what we are asking from you, from our political leadership, but also from our partners, is to look at this very critical agenda from the perspective of the building blocks that local and regional governments can contribute to. And of course, those building blocks is reshaping the way that we look at the commons and our relation with the commons. What are those critical components of peace? How can we ensure a life for everyone on earth? What are the key components of our humanity, the way that we relate to each other, and what does it entail to preserve and protect some of the core values that have helped us develop humanity as we know it, and in particular, for instance, human rights? And what is the governance of that system? How can we contribute from the local level, from the ownership of the people, into the vision of the kind of governance and how decisions need to be made for the future? So this is not something that we are going to be solving in a single exercise, but it's something. This exercise will help us identify the components that we will need to develop later. You all know that we will have a very important component on peace in our retreat, because the way that we are looking at the international agenda and our inputs to the multilateral system, certainly the Summit for the Future will be very critical, but also the Social Summit in 2025 will be a very important milestone for some of the principles that we are defending together and for the common agenda that we are trying to shape. So this is the political context that we wanted to draw, and the responsibility that we have as partnership to work on it. And of course, all of the different partners that are participating in this exercise will also need to identify and try to influence the local and regional government agenda on this area. That is what we expect, to adapt our own agenda to the collective thinking, to the co-creation of these notions of peace. What does peace mean today? How can local and regional governments contribute to the building blocks of peace? And what kind of role does peace have in the multilateral system? And I insist, a while back when we were working on our Pact for the Future, this was not as big as a question as it is right now. And we were looking at conflict resolution, but not maybe at the bigger questions around peace as we are all doing today. So thank you very much for joining this exercise. We have some introductory words from from the member of our executive presidency, the mayor of The Hague, Jan van Zanen, who is also co-chair of Strong Cities, one of the partners that are going to be addressing this exercise. We propose to look at this short message, and then we will start with the entry points of this exercise, with the founder and executive director of the African Center for Constructive Resolutions of Conflicts, and with Carola Gunnarsson, the UCIG Special Envoy on Freedom, Solidarity, and Fighting Violence against local political leaders. Let us listen to this message, colleague. I hope it is ready. Thank you.
Dear friends, dear colleagues, thank you, dear Emilia and UCLG Secretariat, for organizing this important discussion.
I don't have any sound right now. I don't know if anybody else has this problem.
It is very important that the various players in this field are joining forces to come forward with a strong joint position. Particularly now. 2023 was the year with most conflicts since 30 years. The number of mortal victims was 14% higher than a year before. The amount of violent confrontations rose with 28%. Those figures frighten me. 2023 also was the year in which research revealed that the world had not been as anti-democratic in 35 years. The number of people living in autocracies has increased. Only 13% of the population, 1 billion people, live in a liberal democracy. The ambition of the UN Secretary General to develop a new agenda for peace is of crucial importance. And I truly believe that it is from the level of territories that we can promote peaceful solutions. In my own city, I see that international conflicts, such as the war in Gaza or Ukraine, have a direct impact on what happens in my city. It has an impact on how citizens with different backgrounds relate and interact with each other. Cities are continuously looking for ways in bringing communities together to create cohesion at the local level, to prevent radicalization, polarization. Peaceful coexistence is central in everything we do. In the city of The Hague, we do this by actively engaging at the grassroots levels with prevention teams. These teams engage actively with youngsters to provide them with perspective, to prevent them from radicalizing, and to promote understanding. And throughout the Netherlands, we see that these types of very local initiatives have important impact. These very concrete examples are what we need to show to the world. For example, also through the UCLG Peace Prize, which has been identifying important and inspiring examples of local peace building. I was also impressed by what I saw in Bogota, Colombia. To work from the local, the social level as building blocks for peace. We can engage in extensive policy dialogues at an abstract level, but in the end, it is about giving perspective to young people, to give them a meaning in their life, to give them a future. And that is what, according to me, needs to be at the center of our discussions and of our recommendations to the Secretary General of the United Nations. I think it's great that within our network we are trying to see how we can best put forward this message. I wish you a fruitful discussion today and look forward to joining you on a future occasion. And I also look forward, of course, to seeing you very, very soon at the UCLG retreat in Barcelona. All the best, dear friends.
Well, thank you very much, dear Mayor Van Zanen. Well, you have seen it is clear for the UCLG political leadership, the way that we are looking at this agenda is certainly from a local perspective, but we are very aware of the impact that it has globally in our actions at multilateral level. I would like to highlight something that Mayor Van Zanen has shared, and that is our cities, our neighborhoods do have sense the impact, go through the impact of conflicts everywhere else in the world, and it is in our cities and in our neighborhoods that we need to address a change to address conflicts and to create also a culture of peace. I'm very grateful as well for reminding us of the important role that the World Forum on Cities and Territories for Peace in Bogota has played. I know that the special envoy Carola Gunnarsson was also there with us, and today we have with us our colleagues from Montevideo that are going to be hosting the next forum following Bogota. So there are different instruments that we already have. Our municipal peace talks, of course, that we will need to shape following this exercise with all of your inputs, and building on the long-standing partnerships that we have forged throughout the years. I am very, very grateful that Vasu Housen, the founder and executive director of the African Center for Constructive Resolution of Disputes, Accord, is here with us. When we first touched base, Vasu, they were very different times, right? We were preparing our summit in Durban, in Echequeni, and we were looking at the development agendas as this very important framework for us to also forge peace. Now we are looking at the peace agenda in order to forge the development agenda. I think it has inverted a little bit. That's how I experience it from the place that I am standing. So we really look forward to hearing how you are experiencing this in the work that you do throughout Africa. Welcome, dear friend. Thank you for being with us. Please unmute, Vasu. We cannot hear you yet.
Yeah.
There you go.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Emilia. Always a pleasure to see you. And you're always so energetic about the issues. And now I think we have reached a stage in the world where it requires the collective energy at the level of your energy that we all respond to the challenges. You are correct to say, and it's almost as if we're on the same mind, that when we met several years ago, I don't think that many people understood the importance of cities as building blocks for peace across the world. We were still in a paradigm of state-centric approach to dealing with the major challenges of the world. And today, as we experience 8 billion people on our planet who have substantially urbanized, and we begin to see the movement from monocultures to multicultures, and at a time when we are on the cusp of great technological changes, one would expect that we would be living in a world full of possibilities and innovations that will be able to resolve the challenges of the day. Yet we are confronted today, as we all know now, in one of the most dangerous times that we have seen in recent history. Every day is a day that takes us closer to a global conflagration. And I think many of us who have been involved, as you know, Accord, we have been involved in conflict management for the last 30 years. And in our experience over those 30 years, we have come to realize that peace cannot be made only at the global level, only at the continental level, or at the national level. The building blocks of peace start in cities. And this, Emilia, was the reason for our partnership when we started. To an extent, I believe now we have been vindicated, because it was in a way pioneering that we came together to say, how do we start this movement of building peace at the grassroots? And ourselves working on the African continent, we signed an MOU with the Africa chapter of United Cities and Global United Cities and Local Government, based out of Morocco, and we have since conducted a number of trainings for city mayors across Africa. At least about 120 mayors across Africa have been trained in conflict management. And the reason for that is because we recognized and realized that with the demographic shifts that are taking place across the world, and the development deficits that we are seeing, that we will see a rise in social and political conflict across the world. And that rise in social and political conflict will be at the coalface of cities. And city officials have to interact with a variety of stakeholders to be able to mitigate and resolve these conflicts. So we started together with UCLG Africa, the local and national capacities for peace, to build the capacity of local actors, women's groups, youth groups, student leaders, faith-based leaders, traditional leaders, and importantly, city officials, as well as security agencies that are charged with dealing with conflict. Now, when we look at the Summit of the Future, it will be a visionary exercise by the United Nations Secretary General to look at how do we chart a way forward for the world that begins to mitigate. And I think here, Emilia, we must ensure that cities have a voice, that people at the local level have a voice in shaping the agenda of the future. As you know, we also started Global Peace, where we work together with UCLG Global to look at building a global constituency of young people. And I have to say, in the 120 intergenerational dialogues we have conducted over the last 2 years across the world, in all the continents, I have met some of the brightest and best young people who are putting their heads together to look at how do we shape the future? How do they shape their future? And they have been working within their cities to try to create what we now call the Futures Forum, to be able to look at the various areas that we're talking about: transportation, healthcare, housing, etc., and for them to shape what they think the future should look like in each of those areas. So we cherish our partnership with UCLG Emilia. We look forward to meeting these challenges together in a collective response to see how we can shape a better world and move away from the kind of world that we are witnessing today. I thank you, and I look forward to listening to the rest of the discussions.
Thank you very much, dear Basu. Indeed, we did not discuss in advance what we were going to say in this meeting, but we are very much in line. And I want to highlight two issues that I hope we can address today. The one of ensuring that voice in the Summit for the Future, which partially we have managed through that a direct entry with the advisory group of local and regional governments to the United Nations Secretary General. So partially we have a way for inputs there, and that allows us also to have contacts with the co-facilitators. So we're trying to ensure that we do that beyond being stakeholders, of course, with the other, in the other processes, participating in the stakeholders consultation. But also, I think a very critical component, which is that exercise, that projection exercise, where youth needs to play a very critical role, and where intergenerational dialogue is very important. And in here, what we are noticing, and we will see now with the special envoy, with Carola, how she perceives this. But what we are noticing is that there is so much uncertainty right now around the world. And people and young people at local level, they feel there is so much unknown and so uncertain, and so many bad news are being provided, that opens a kind of door for looking inward and not so much to a collective agenda. And I think this is one of the big obstacles that we will need to face. It's also leading to situations like the one that we are seeing now in Ecuador, for instance, where very unexpectedly organized crime takes over. We see also violence. This is directly linked to the work that Ms. Gunnarsson is doing with UCLG, violence against politicians. So I think there is a role that we need to play here. And I'm not certain that the Summit for the Future is going to be the powerful moment that we all expect it to have. So if the Summit for the Future is not going to be that powerful moment, what kind of powerful platform do we need to construct? So this is a bit the challenge that I have for us now in this introduction session, but also for the rest of the discussions. Carola Gunnarsson, our special envoy, please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Emilia, and dear colleagues and friends. Nice to see you again after these winter holidays. Everyone has the right to life, liberty, and the security of person. This is Article 3 in the UN Human Rights Declaration. That sentence is actually the ground to what human rights is all about. And human rights are the fundamentals in all our agendas. We have to keep that in mind when we are working with our agendas, our political strategies, and our future exercises. But first of all, we always have to remember that whatever challenges or opportunities we are discussing for the future, without peace, we don't have a future. The respect for the rule of law, human rights, and democracy are pillars for sustainable peace. The understanding of peace and democracy should also be an understanding of the reasons and the consequences of war. War and conflicts come in different shapes. Every attack on human rights is an attack against our safe societies. From the local and regional level, we both have to condemn war, but also constantly work for peace and peacekeeping. Without peace, we can never reach the SDGs. And on the other hand, we can't maintain peace without working inclusive together with people on the local level. War and violence do not only mean human suffering and loss of life. Violence also destroys the interpersonal trust and social cohesion that are the basis for a society's economic, environmental, and social development. The revision of the SDG 16 should be both an update to the world we are living in today, with fake news and the attacks on the digital arena, but also about the fundamental rights to democracy and human rights. We need cooperation and multilateral peace building with a global, national, and local perspective. Today's universal challenges can only be achieved with a more inclusive and robust multilateralist system in which local communities have a say and local and regional governments are fully recognized as transformative actors. National decision makers should give political space and recognition to local and regional governments by establishing regular dialogue with the subnational level and by including local elected representatives in their delegations to any relevant high-level meetings. It's mostly important that we work both ways around, that we localize the SDGs and the global agendas, but also that we share our challenges and opportunities from the local level with both national governments and on the international arena, so that we are the voice of the people we represent. As a local politician, it can sometimes feel a bit overwhelming with agendas, policies, and different needs. And sometimes it feels a bit lonely when you see the struggle and the horrible situation for so many people living in a hard world affected by war and violence. Then we have to keep in mind that we are not alone. We can never stop working and acting for peace, democracy, human rights, and gender equality. We, the local politicians, are closest to the people, and we can make a change. But we need to do it together, and we need to support each other in the work for the future. This can be done within our networks when we learn from each other. International cooperation is crucial to achieve the sustainable goals. Learning among peers and further afield can bring positive and mutually beneficial change that raises standards for local policy for the public. We can work through municipal partnerships and twinning arrangements, which have demonstrated their importance by fostering shared common values, contributing to openness and greater understanding between diverse groups and communities. This model can be enhanced and amplified. Democracy must be built by people for people. Peace must always be built on democracy and inclusive societies. It starts with the local level. Democracy is not just about engaging in politics. It's about building inclusive societies with trust for the institutional system where everyone has the same opportunities and the same rights. There are different ways for people to be engaged in their life and in their society, through the civil society, freedom of speech, through culture, and through education. But it all comes down to the Article 3 in the Human Rights Declaration. Everyone has the right to life, liberty, and security of person. That is what we from the local level must secure and work for together. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you very much, Special Envoy, for this message. I think it is a very. I'm really grateful because I think it's a realistic message that links up the challenges of peace with the challenges at local level. On the other hand, it is a message that is full of hope because it gives us some starting points where we can work at local level to prevent the escalation that we are seeing. And I think that the link between the Sustainable Development Agenda with the SDGs, Agenda 2030, and the Peace Agenda is something that is kind of underestimated. I think that rescuing the Sustainable Development Goals is a very big contribution also to the future peace agenda. And somehow I don't feel that this is framed as it should be right now in the international discussion, and it might be up to us, up to the local and regional government constituency with our partners in civil society to do this. I mean, we are going to go to the Mentimeter now, but is there anything else that you would like to say to each other? Basu, is there any additional reflection that you would like to have concluding this first segment? Carola, same thing after hearing each other, or are you okay? And let us go to the Mentimeter. Basu, go ahead.
I think, Emilia, what I can say is you are right to say, you know, we have a lot of expectations about the Summit of the Future, but given the current dynamics in the world, particularly all the geopolitical tensions that we are seeing, we may not get such a moment. And what is needed now is a moment of inspiration, a moment of hope in the world. And I think we need to work very, very closely together, civil society, UCLG, that if this moment is missed at a global level, we should be ready to pick it up at the local level and give the world, particularly young people, some inspiration and hope for the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think this is exactly what we're trying to build. This is the kind of coalition that we're trying to build with all the partners that we are going to be hearing today. That is the big task that we have ahead, but we're trying to do it as realistically as possible. Carola, any final words on this before we go to the Mentimeter exercise?
Thank you. Well, Vasu said that we need hope for the future. And I think that when we listened to you, Vasu, we could really hear about hope for the future, because you gave us such successful examples of the important work of the local level. Because for me, as a local politician, and for you as representatives of local politicians, we must always highlight the importance of the work that is done on the local level. And we can never sit down and wait for somebody else to do something. We must do it ourselves. And then hope for the future is what we need. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Special Envoy. I'm going now to Claudia Ribosa from our team. You know that we usually that we like to make you all participate. So the interactive consultation is going to be around a couple of questions using the Mentimeter tool that all of you that are very loyal to our exercises know how to use. But Claudia will run you through it. And Claudia, tell us what questions do you have in petto for us?
Yes, thank you, Emilia. So, well, I think most of you already know how to use Mentimeter, but for those who don't, it is a presentation tool that allows presenters to ask questions and see the answers of the participants instantly and anonymously. So please, I ask you to grab your phone and scan this QR code or access the website www.menti.com and enter the code that you can see on the screen, 33309532. I'll give a few seconds for everyone to connect before we proceed to the first question. I think we can start already with the first one. So, describe with one word actions needed to build peace from bottom up. So you can write 3 different words to answer this question. We can start to see the first words. We see dialogue, we see political will, we see empathy, pragmatism, justice, dialogue, again, local diplomacy, partnerships, cooperation. Well, most of them we've already heard them in the first segment.
Yeah, I see. For instance, communication, which I think is a very very important part, and it's part of some of the points that Carola was making as well on how you do ensure that you have trust and that you address fake news. I really like that empathy and dialogue are coming up so big in here. Because that is also a very differentiating kind of role that leadership at local level can play. Yeah, the level of empathy and the way that you take decisions can be much closer to the people, not only in terms of proximity, but also in terms of empathy, understanding what we need, what kind of world do we want to live in, and respect is a very, very important one. And I think that one of the biggest gaps that we are seeing, Claudia, is that a lot of people do not feel they are respected, right? And they feel a gap emerging in this. So yeah, very, very interesting cloud that we hope we will be able to use as well when we prepare our session on the building blocks for peace during our retreat. Do you have another question?
Yes. I think we can go to the next one because we already have 126 for the first one. So the second, what are the main obstacles to peace from the local perspective? So what is your opinion regarding the obstacles to peace?
Yeah, and some of them have come up already, I think, in the previous one, right? But competencies and resources, yeah, why am I not surprised about this? is one that always comes up. What else do you see there, Claudia?
I see the media.
Yeah.
The social media. I think it's a very important one.
Yeah.
Division, which goes also in line with polarization and extremism. Intolerance as well.
Right. The more that I talk to elected officials from around the world, the more I am confronted with this, with a great concern around media. And so I think that that is something that we need to address, not only from the perspective of the future of technology and artificial intelligence, but also from the perspective of trust. It has been a line that we've been trying to develop in the dialogue with journalists. I see that it becomes to be, it remains to be a very, very important one. But trust, access to information, leadership, jurisdiction, I guess, is legal frameworks that we are trying to say there, and intolerance. Something that we are feeling in our streets as well. Very interesting. If there is someone that cares to comment on this, please do raise your hand and we will give you the floor. In the meantime, I think we can go. There is one more, right?
Yes, one last question.
Okay, let's go there.
So, in your opinion, what are the transformations needed at the global level to ensure that all actors are included in peace building? So now we focus on transformation at the global level. It is also an open-ended question, so you can write as many words as you want.
It is a pretty big question.
Yeah,
Indeed.
Not easy.
So our participants will be very bold addressing this one. I don't see results yet. Here they come. Yeah, the creation, a ver qué leemos aquí. Yeah, the creation of consultative mechanisms that, between actors, public actors and organizations. How do we translate vinculantes? So compulsory. In fact, that's something that you can legally enforce, right? And that opens a very big question there of our multilateral system. Many of the decisions that we take at multilateral levels, we can actually not enforce. So it's a big question that opens up for the reform of the system. Claudia, what else do you see?
I see participatory processes. Well, I don't know, participatory processes at the global level. How How do you interpret this, Emilia?
Well, I mean, many of our colleagues are looking at the reform of the United Nations, the multilateral system, and I think, look, let us be honest. I don't think that the Security Council is actually serving the purpose that it was anticipated to play, and so maybe thinking of. There are colleagues that are looking at a parliament in the United Nations. There are colleagues that are looking at the Earth Constitution. There are some thinkers that are working with the students, our civil society, to do this. So I think it's opening up the participatory mechanisms, like we are seeing at European level as well. I think it goes down that path, but if the person that wrote that would like to clarify, remember, you can just raise your hand. Can you pick a couple of other ones, Claudia, and then maybe we can close this segment?
Well, I can see recognition a few times on the screen. So recognition of the key role of local and regional governments in the multilateral system. I think this is very important, and this is what we are working for.
Yeah. But I think recognition, if I may, I think the recognition of the role of local and regional governments that doesn't stand on its own. I think the multilateral system, and I'm putting this for the next segments, for the speakers to take into account, that the reason why local and regional governments need to have a space at the decision-making table is because also communities will need to be involved at this decision-making table in a different way. So it's the recognition of other stakeholders in this agenda that I find important, beyond the role of local and regional governments, which obviously from where I am standing, this is what we are working towards. But I think in this agenda is a complementarity between our role and that of civil society and the space that we create there. I found it a very interesting exercise. Thank you very much, Claudia. Anything else that you want to share with us at this point, or shall we move to the next segment?
I think we can move to the next segment. Thank you very much, Emilia.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for this creative, interactive exercise. It gives us a new, more food for thought for our dialogue. I'm going to give the floor now to Jose Alvarez, whom you know is a member of our policy team and has been leading our narrative efforts, has also been helping develop the agenda of our World Forum of Cities and Territories for Peace. So you are very well placed, Jose, to facilitate the contribution segment. The floor is yours. Good luck.
Thank you, Emilia, and thank you for these words and for giving me the space to introduce this moment. The contributions, like this aspect of the exercise, allows partners of UCLG to lay out their work and how it can relate to the global agenda of the World Organization, and it's an exercise for us to think together how to build peace from the bottom up. I won't take much more time because I think we are running a bit late, and I'm going to introduce the speakers in this segment. Be aware that I will be telling you to please conclude if you're taking too long, because we are running a bit short. So without any further ado, I'd like to invite Boyan Francos, Program Officer of NYU Center on International Cooperation and representative of Peace in Our Cities, to take the floor. Thank you, Boyan, whenever you're ready.
Excellent. Thank you, Emilia. Thank you, Jose, as well. I very much look forward to share and add the contributions on behalf of Peace in Our Cities network. I know we're going to have a PowerPoint up soon, but as we're getting that up and ready, let me start by saying that I truly believe that there is a deep and enduring form of happiness in imagining the future that is better than the present, and feeling like you have the power to move the world towards it. And I really hope that many of you on this call share and agree with that today. And I also know that many of you on this call have the power to actually move the world to a better, more peaceful future. Now, the questions that we have to answer are, well, how do we want that peaceful future to look like in the year 2030 when we plan to implement the SDGs, of course? And also, how can we ensure that the 3/4 of the world who will be living in urban populations by 2050 will be living in peace? You know, to answer these questions, many will suggest that we should start by ending conflict and wars and ensuring that new ones don't break out. And I agree, I 100% agree with this. And cities have an important role to play in this endeavor, as we heard, through peace diplomacy, through dialogue, through exchanges. But we also have to acknowledge that solving wars and entrenched conflicts, it's hard, it's very difficult. There are no best practices or prepackaged solutions which will guarantee results. And also, while war is the most intense manifestation of violence and disorder, we cannot longer ignore that roughly 80% of violent deaths that take place today in the world, they take place outside of conflict zones, in places that are ostensibly at peace. And many of these violent deaths take place in urban areas. So to put simply, and many mayors and city officials know this, lives are lost on the streets of our cities, and the hurt of violence is felt in our neighborhoods, on our squares, and in the homes of our cities. It's felt by different people, and I think it's important to be specific who these people are. They're young people, they're women and children, they're racial and ethnic minorities, they're members of the LGBTQ community, they're poor people, they're people in informal settlements on the edges of our cities. And while it's difficult, as I said, to solve conflicts, and there are no tried and tested solutions to ending wars, we do have the knowledge, good practices, and tested solutions on how to address the problems of everyday violence. I'd argue with some political will and increased investments in these solutions, and we heard everyone talking about investments, I do believe that we can make significant progress toward a vision of peace in our cities. And that's the main message that I want to share with you today. We must and we can significantly reduce all forms of violence in our cities by the year 2030. Now, that's the belief that also is at the core of the work here that we do at Peace in Our Cities. We are a network providing deep support to cities who are gathered around the goal of reducing the most serious forms of violence. And we accompany them in those endeavors through research, through exchanges, through advocacy support, through technical assistance. Going forward, we commit to scaling the support, but we also look forward to broaching new frontiers on how we can do that effectively and ethically with the new technological tools that we have, how we can leverage AI for violence prevention and reduction. Now, if we move to the next slide, in response to a question of how can local and regional governments leverage their leading action at the local level to build peace and influence global conversations on peace and security, I want to suggest a few things. I think the best way we can showcase city leadership for peace is by spotlighting and celebrating tangible and measurable solutions in violence reduction. Put simply, let's show that city and local leaders are addressing the problem of everyday violence, which matters most in people's life. I also, as I hinted at earlier, believe that we need to move beyond just focus on conflict violence and not forget that violence manifests itself in urban areas across the world in many pernicious ways, in the forms of life lost due to violence, in the forms of harm inflicted on individuals, in particular those individuals with the least political power and privilege. I would also argue that we must redouble our efforts to address the problem of that plagues every society today, and it's the problem of violence against women. And I would also argue that we must work to increase the number of local and regional governments making a political pledge to reduce the most serious forms of violence in their communities by a specific percentage point. In Peace in Our Cities, we argue that's 50% by the year 2030. Some will go beyond that, some will struggle to get to that point, but having this tangible target by a specific date, I think it's very important. Now, if we move to the next slide, as we think about new agenda for peace, on our end, as Peace in Our Cities, we commit to advancing 4 out of 12 actions that were outlined there in New Agenda for Peace. And I'll quickly go through each one of them. On Action 3, which deals with focus on prevention and the creation of national prevention strategy, we commit to assisting cities in developing new or boosting their existing comprehensive violence prevention strategies. We commit to advocating for inclusion of local and regional authorities as equal partners in the development of national prevention strategies. We commit to further, really recommit to advancing human rights informed approaches to violence prevention reduction, which is very important because it's very easy to slip into short-term solutions that rely on strong law enforcement. And we also commit to investing in development of centralized mechanisms for violence prevention and reduction in cities, things such as offices of violence prevention and reduction. Under Action 4, on accelerating implementation of the 2030 agenda and the links to violence and insecurity, I think it's very important to make those links and connections that was hinted at earlier, linking the peace and the development agenda. And in this regard, on our end, we're really committing to continuing to celebrate successes in violence reduction by spotlighting mayors and city leaders in global policy forums and the good work that they're doing. We commit to assisting in unlocking new development funding for comprehensive violence prevention reduction in cities. We'll continue to campaign for halving urban violence by 2030 and getting more cities to support. And actually, in the coming months, we hope to launch the Bank of Insights with ideas and best practices on how to go about building urban peace. We'll also continue to facilitate peer-to-peer exchanges between cities and civil society organizations on how to localize peace targets of the 2030 agenda. I'll wrap up with the two other actions very quickly. On Action 5, when we talk about transforming gender power dynamics, we do commit to redoubling research and advocacy capacity on gender-based violence and violence against women specifically. And we look forward to supporting the Declaration on Violence Against Women, which will be put out by the Change Network in the coming months. We hope to expand our outreach efforts to women mayors. They're still a minority in the world, but we need to reach those that are in positions of power and authority and give them support. And we'll continue to invest in research examining violence against women mayors, a trend that we're seeing develop across the world where our local officials, particularly women, are increasingly under attack. And on Action 11, when we're thinking about weaponization of emerging domains and new technologies, as I mentioned earlier, we really do hope to further invest in exchanges of best practices on ethical use of AI and new technologies for violence prevention and reduction. Now, switching gears to talk very, very quickly about our commitments to the advancing some of the ideas put out in the UN's Our Common Agenda. If we go to the next slide, I would argue that our work falls squarely really under the commitment 3, which is to promote peace and prevent conflicts, and specifically under that subheading of reshaping responses to all forms of violence. We stand ready to input on how we can more effectively address all forms of violence in cities holistically, and we'll continue to support the global movement to halve levels of violence around the world by the year 2030. Already, we've secured mayoral representation in the high-level task force on halving global violence, which is co-chaired by ministers from Switzerland, South Africa, Costa Rica, Liberia, and the African Union. Vasu is also a member, and Vasu actually had a chance to host the latest discussions of this task force in Durban not too long ago. The task force is due to publish a report in the coming months to which we're providing input on how we can be addressing the problem of urban violence. I'll end with the last slide, if we can move forward, and I'll end highlighting 3 asks from the UN system as we're thinking about how they can adapt to the rapidly urbanizing world and the peace and security challenges that come along with it. Challenges and opportunities, I should mention. These are the asks for greater investment in expertise on civilian protection in urban settings in UN departments that are dealing with the issues of peace and security, be that DPPO, the Peace Building Commission, etc. I also do believe that mayors and local leaders should play a more prominent role in briefing the members of the UN Security Council and provide updates on the protection of civilians in urban warfare, as well as in the situations of high levels of violence, which might be warlike. And lastly, this is a general ask, but I think this is a very important ask, and that is for the UN to start seeing cities as levers for change, for peace, in the same ways they've recognized them as key actors for climate change. Cities can, are, and should be a key player in informing multilateralism and implementing progress for peace. And on that, I'll stop and look forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Boyan, for your insights and for being very provocative in the acts in asking the United Nations to see local and regional governments as partners in peace, as they are seeing them already in climate, which is basically transforming how the United Nations understands local and regional governments, and also when it comes to the relations with the UN Security Council. You also mentioned very, very prominently the importance of highlighting local and regional initiatives in peace building and showcasing all these champions, local and regional governments in peace, which is something that we as the UCLG are wont to do. We did it in our peace forum in Bogota, and we also do this with mechanisms such as the UCLG Prize, of which my colleague Sane Panameron, who is in this call, is one of the focal points and a program manager at VNG International. So Sane, please tell us more about the VNG Peace Prize and highlighting local initiatives. Go ahead.
Thanks a lot, Jose, and thanks, Boyan. I think there are a lot of linkages between the two of us, but or not the two of us, between both initiatives. So the UCLG Peace Prize is an instrument of UCLG's local peace ecosystem. And as such, we are very supportive of this trajectory and are willing to think along. And as Mayor Fonzano already indicated, we have the unique tools as the UCLG to define the building blocks of sustainable peace from our communities through local democracy and citizen participation. So concerning the contribution of the prize to the new peace agenda, what we would like to highlight here is that we can really showcase the potential and enhance the impact that local and regional governments can have. So the UCLG Peace Prize and its actions or its cases can be seen as an example of how mayors, governors, and local leaders can play an instrumental role in opening pathways of dialogue as a pillar of sustainable peace. And as such, we would also like to put the Peace Prize forward as a way of putting the role of them on the agenda. As such, we can definitely learn from the Peace Prize and its finalists. The cases of the Peace Prize have been proven to be successful and successful examples of the key roles that local and regional governments can play. And they also provide a basis for joint learning. As the Peace Prize, we stick to the definition that of a culture of peace. So arguing that peace is not only the absence of war, but it's a lot more than it. And also what you see in many of the cases of the Peace Prize is that actually local governments are addressing the root causes of the problems rather than ending the fire. And as you can see on a picture here, you see the municipality of Palmyra, who won the last UCLG Peace Prize with their initiative Puzzles, which is also supported by Peace in Our Cities, like Boyan mentioned, by spotlighting them and also helping them with funding. Next slide, please. In order to link them to the recommendations of the new agenda for peace, we also think that one of the things that the Peace Prize links to, even though it's an instrument, it's Action 2, boost preventive diplomacy in an era of divisions. So what we really hope is to foster this learning environment, although we do not really provide political statements as such. So we have the unique tools to define the building blocks of sustainable peace, and we can make use of city diplomacy. And then Action 3, shift the prevention of sustainable peace paradigm within the countries, which again links to our definition of a culture of peace. And then the third one is accelerate the implementation of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Next slide, please. Then, similar as Peace in Our Cities, we are committed to Commitment 3, promoting peace and prevent conflicts. It's reshape the responses to all forms of violence, like I just said before. And then there's one main shout out that we would like to make from the Peace Prize, and that is next slide, please. We would like to make use of all the cases that we have from the Peace Prize to really showcase the potential and enhance the impact. So we came up with this idea to provide a link with strong practitioners to really validate the outcomes and outputs of this trajectory. So, for example, we could share and validate the outcome with a finalist of the UCLG Peace Prize and link them also with other cases of peace in our cities to really discuss, okay, what have we been discussing within this group, but also in a workshop during the UCLG retreat, and does it align, does it resonate with actually the people on the ground to make it a bit more practically led. That's it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Sanne. Point taken in the importance of showcasing the potential of local and regional governments, which is a thing that we've also seen in the previous presentation and that I think will come up in a few others. And also to showcase the impact that they have on the ground and how to link the different work of local and regional governments and their practitioners in order to learn from each other and keep growing together. I'd like to now give the floor to Alison Curtis, Deputy Executive Director of Strong Cities Network, to present the work of their organization. Thank you so much. Alison, please, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Jose. And full credit to the previous colleagues. We echo all of their contributions. Great to hear from them. Also great to hear from Mayor Van Zanen. He's one of Strong Cities Steering Committee co-chairs and a very strong advocate for the work that we do and for unlocking the power and potential of cities for creating and maintaining peace and social cohesion. For those who are not aware, the Strong Cities Network works with cities and other subnational governments to support their city-led efforts to address hate, extremism and polarisation. This obviously starts with a foundation of whole of society prevention and the role that local governments can play in really driving that forward. But we also work with cities around city-led response to crises and the dynamics that can erode social cohesion and present a challenge for maintaining peace. While the international community has invested significantly in working on PCVE with the national partners and supporting CSOs, the potential of local government as drivers and engines of implementation, but also ensuring that policies reflect realities on the ground are often overlooked. And this is a challenge that we are committed to addressing. It's also despite local administrations being closest to their communities and with often the most nuanced understanding of local dynamics that can impact communities. So we want to use this opportunity to touch on some specific thematic areas in which Strong Cities is committed to continuing to support cities, but also how we as a network of more than 220 cities around the world commit to working with UN policymakers and colleagues to ensure that local voices are reflected in policymaking and implementation. What this means in practice is demonstrating to multilateral partners how engaging with cities and mayors should not be regarded as an additional layer of engagement, but rather an opportunity for them to enrich their policymaking and implementation with ground realities, and in so doing, make international policymaking more effective and sustainable. Some of the challenges that we have seen in this area, efforts are almost exclusively focused at the national level. For example, work on national PCV action plans or discussions about rehabilitation and reintegration of returning foreign terrorist fighters and their families, or supporting refugees and migrants are often only held with national stakeholders, yet cities are the level of government with whom individuals need to engage on a myriad of services on which successful reintegration depends. Cities also need to respond and can help navigate the local fallout when things go wrong or when communities react unfavourably. In many countries, whether due to a lack of national local cooperation, lack of specific mandate, or national and local governments being from different political parties, cities have very little visibility of such discussions. We have heard time and time again from cities that the mayor or city official only heard that their city had received returnees or refugees via local news reports. They had not been engaged in discussions on how to provide support. This erodes trust on many levels. The concept of prevention, or PCVE more broadly, has been undercut by this lack of trust, the result being that prevention is often viewed skeptically in many regions. It also fails to leverage the productive role that mayors and local administrations can and must play in supporting not only returnees and their families and refugees, but also how they can mitigate and manage the community backlash, which can impact broader social cohesion. So during our Global Summit in New York in September, we used that event to engage key UN bodies and colleagues across several work streams, bringing them together in a room with mayors to hear from city officials directly some of the challenges they face, with the hope that future policy making will be grounded in some of these realities. On rehabilitation and reintegration of RFTFs and their families, we brought the UN Special Rapporteur for the promotion and protection of human rights and fundamental freedoms while countering terrorism into a room with mayors for a really candid conversation on the importance of having UN bodies engaged in conversations around hate speech and online, offline harms. We brought UNOCT officials and officials from the UN Office on Genocide Prevention and the Responsibility to Protect into a room together so they could hear directly from mayors. We also convened a roundtable with mayors from across the MENA region to meet with UNCTED, along with a separate line of effort with IOM, to ensure again that mayors have a direct line to policymakers and that those policies can eventually reflect the contributions that cities can make in the region. We also launched in December an initiative to support cities and bring awareness to international partners of the destabilising impact global crises are having at the local level. One of the key challenges that Mayor Van Zanen cited in his intervention earlier. Through this work stream, we are supporting mayors and cities to navigate local impacts in a way that promotes social cohesion and ensures that human rights are at the heart of prevention and response strategies, promoting inclusion and protecting against marginalisation and discrimination. And we believe strongly that local governments have a crucial role to play in this regard. Next slide. In terms of how this contribution links to the 12 recommendations for action, our list was very long, but we've narrowed it down to 3. So our first is sort of as with the other organisations, under the Preventing Conflict and Violence and Sustaining Peace contribution. Action 3, shifting the prevention and sustainable peace paradigm within countries. This includes building trust and including cities as key stakeholders in whole of society approaches. Currently, this action item focuses on national governments in a lot of the conversations. Yet we really want to emphasise that in order to have policies and stakeholders trust the process, it's necessary to engage cities that have the understanding of the nuanced dynamics that happen, particularly with marginalised and hard-to-reach communities, that no one is left behind. Local governments are also more aware and have deeper understanding of the different drivers that enable sort of violence and conflict, and the infrastructure that exists already that can be leveraged or that is needed to strengthen social cohesion, the conditions for peace, and promoting equality and the rule of law at the local level. We also think it's really essential to consider the role of border cities, as we're doing in East and Southern Africa and elsewhere, to hear the ground realities they face to ensure that any cross-border and regional prevention frameworks that are developed not only are reflective of national knowledge and expertise, but the ground realities that these mayors and cities are facing on the borders. Quickly here, Action 4, accelerating implementation of the 2030 agenda with a focus on 16, peace, justice and strong institutions. And then we also included Action 5, transform gendered power dynamics, because at the local level is where people engage with government, can see models of and benefits of women's meaningful participation in leadership and in decision-making. Through our work with cities, we proactively encourage and promote and elevate the voices of women. And we see this as a significant role for local governments in this action item. Slide. So in terms of how this contribution links to the commitments, we have commitment 3, promote peace and prevent conflicts. Commitment 4, abide by international law and ensure justice. And commitment 6, build trust, which we place a lot of emphasis on. Slide. And before Jose tells me that I have no time left, because I know I'm running long. We focused in terms of a daring contribution or ask on a contribution. In addition to finding opportunities to host side events on the margins of high-level events, funding mayors to travel to events to speak directly with multilateral partners, whether convened by strong cities, partners, or UN organisations. Our commitment, and we see great value in supporting mayors and other local leaders in how they engage during these opportunities. We are encouraging city leaders to speak really frankly about ground realities, very clearly and plainly. We believe international policy making and implementation can be made so much more impactful and sustainable if they are informed by these ground realities. We also encourage mayors to explain why some UN international terminology is not well understood at the local level and can in fact be counterproductive, eroding trust in international interventions. We encourage mayors to explain these sensitivities around terminology in a hope that that will help inform implementation. And we also want to encourage sort of cities as key stakeholders to overcoming, sorry, let me say that again, I wasn't clear. We also see cities really facing challenges in implementing international frameworks and trying to contribute to international goals where they are of a different political party to their national counterpart. And this is not something that is really ever reflected in how multilateral organisations try and work with local governments. This is so in such cases, cities are often not even made aware of or just blatantly excluded from national level discussions around implementation, or they simply don't have an opportunity to feed into conversations that inform NAPs. So the international community understanding the challenge that's presented by domestic politics is also something that we really try and promote as a reason why they should engage cities in policy making and implementation. I'm going to stop there, Jose. Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Alison. I'm sorry because I'm doing a terrible time at getting you all to keep to the 5 minutes, but I just wanted to thank you for your contribution and to thank you for mentioning the importance of engaging UN bodies in conversations with local and regional governments, which is something that also UCLG regularly does, organizing consultations with UN rapporteurs and ensuring and trying to make sure that their findings are included in the processes to which the constituency of local and regional governments provides inputs to and contributes to. So I'm going to go very quickly to our next speaker, to Mr. Emilio Jaton, Secretary of Human Rights of the province of Santa Fe, who has been engaged in UCLG for many years. And so without any further ado, Secretary, please, you have the floor. Thank you.
Bueno, muchas gracias. Voy a tratar de equilibrar la parte idiomática, voy a hablar en español. Si hay algo que está generando problemas en el mundo es la importancia de pensar el futuro ante un flagelo y ante un fantasma que aparece, que es la incertidumbre. Y allí me parece que también hay que anclar algunas de estas cuestiones. Sabemos que es fundamental poder proyectar hacia adelante el valor de las decisiones que tomamos. Y allí está la clave. Pero en contextos de tanta desconfianza y de tanta incertidumbre, proyectar no es un ejercicio fácil y eso lo vemos nosotros en cada decisión. En lugar de invitarnos a pensar el futuro, la incertidumbre muchas veces nos lleva a bajar los brazos, a equivocarnos, a no querer tomar decisiones. Bueno, hoy más que nunca me parece, y este es el escenario clave, necesitamos un análisis claro de los escenarios futuros en el que evaluemos los posibles impactos positivos y riesgos asociados a cada decisión posible que podamos tomar hoy. Y allí está la clave, ¿cómo construimos esas decisiones? ¿De qué manera lo hacemos? Nosotros aquí en la provincia de Santa Fe hemos hecho un análisis de lo que pasaba y sin lugar a dudas, allí estamos poniendo algunos de los ejes claros. Entre todos estamos hablando que los gobiernos locales tienen el poder de la cercanía para fortalecer la paz social y garantizar la seguridad en los territorios que nos toca liderar. Bueno, una forma concreta de trabajar y abordar los desafíos a partir de dimensiones. A ver, los problemas en todas las ciudades del mundo, cuando uno habla con alcaldes del mundo, son los mismos. Simplemente hay una realidad que cada uno debe enfrentar, pero los problemas son los mismos. Y entonces a partir de allí es que nosotros estamos planteando que también la solución puede ser global. Una forma concreta de trabajar es abordar los desafíos a partir de dimensiones. Estas dimensiones para nosotros resultan naturales a todos los lugares del mundo. Todo puede verse identificados en una dimensión. El modelo Santa Fe, que hoy estamos proyectando a otros lugares del mundo y del país, nos identifica. Digo, primero, inclusión e integración sociourbana. A partir de allí es que nosotros vamos a reducir las violencias. ¿Por qué? Porque ganamos en convivencia. Y ese juego de palabras me parece que también es clave. El segundo punto es la sociabilidad y participación. Nosotros construimos decisiones y la participación en las decisiones de parte de la población nos genera bajar esos niveles de violencia también. Y después hay que meterse adentro de los participantes, a las personas en el centro de la escena. Digo, familia y lo que tiene que ver con la vida en particular y los cuidados. Allí es donde tenemos que estar. Yo siempre digo que los alcaldes somos, hoy ya no lo soy, pero soy secretario de Derechos Humanos, somos gestionadores seriales y a partir de allí es que todos los días nos enfrentamos a decisiones y le buscamos algún tipo de solución. Sabemos que a futuro va a haber más desigualdad, sabemos que va a haber más violaciones de los derechos humanos. ¿Por qué? Porque a medida que se quiebran los lazos, las violencias empiezan a aparecer. Pero hoy, y lo estoy viendo en Latinoamérica, con un clic una persona puede ser víctima de trata, de abuso sexual o abuso laboral, y eso hay que prevenirlo. Nosotros sabemos que a partir de las dimensiones nos involucran a todos. La idea es ir a través de un proyecto en común entre todos, una ciudad integrada, una ciudad próxima, una ciudad próspera, una ciudad sustentable y una ciudad cuidadora. No hay que dejar de lado cuando tomamos decisiones las ciudades cuidadoras. Eso es clave. Para nosotros es clave porque a partir de allí, sin lugar a dudas, podemos ganar en convivencia y dejar de lado y reducir la violencia. Digo, esto que estamos hoy proponiendo, que tiene muchos matices, que tiene un desarrollo, que tiene puntos, no es nada más ni nada menos algo que se llevó a cabo y trajo aparejado una mejor ciudad. Hemos reducido la violencia en gran parte en los barrios donde hemos trabajado. Hemos hecho pruebas piloto con eso y ha dado resultados. Yo siempre digo que cuando uno está gestionando ciudades, gestiona la vida de las personas y a partir de allí es donde tenemos que poner el foco. La paz del mundo hoy no depende de una sola persona, la paz del mundo depende de nuestras decisiones, depende de lo que hagamos cada uno en nuestro alrededor. Cuando ese alrededor, ese metro cuadrado, se supere y llegue a una forma global, seguramente que vamos a estar muy bien. Nosotros hemos presentado en una agenda de desarrollo sostenible, un reporte voluntario a través de Naciones Unidas de los ODS. Sin lugar a dudas, eso nos permitió a nosotros mirar y contemplar lo que estaba sucediendo en nuestras regiones. La verdad que hoy la incertidumbre en Latinoamérica es el tema central. En todo tipo, hay un liberalismo que está acosando, una derecha que está trabajando para llevarnos a otro lugar, y allí es donde tenemos que nosotros pensar en esa incertidumbre, cómo armamos nuestro futuro. Yo estoy a disposición de ustedes para poder seguir hablando de cómo bajamos la violencia ganando en convivencia y a partir de lo que ustedes dijeron muy bien, que son las políticas de cohesión. Hoy me toca un lugar, soy secretario de Derechos Humanos y ese lugar también tiene que ver con la paz y tiene que ver con las decisiones que tomamos cada uno de nosotros. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, secretario. Voy a aprovechar también para fomentar un poco la diversidad lingüística y contestarle también en castellano. Nos quedamos con la importante relación en rebajar la violencia para ganar en convivencia y en el poder que tienen las decisiones a nivel local para influir en la vida de los ciudadanos, así como la importante relación entre los derechos humanos y la paz, que es algo que también en CGLU tenemos muy patente y somos muy conscientes. Y me queda la última participante de este segmento, que es Carme Barbañ, directora de Relaciones Ciudadanas de Granollers y representante de Mayors for Peace, de Alcaldes por la Paz. Carme, cuando quiera, tiene la palabra.
Buenas tardes, buenos días. Nosotros hemos preparado una una aportación que se centra básicamente en las contribuciones como red de Alcaldes por la Paz. Ustedes la conocen, Alcaldes por la Paz es una red que ahora mismo tiene 8.300 ciudades miembros en todo el mundo y que trabajamos con 3 objetivos principales. El primero de todo es abolición de las armas nucleares. El segundo, conseguir ciudades resilientes y seguras. Esto muy vinculado a la Agenda 2030 de Desarrollo Sostenible, a lo de ese 11 específicamente. Y luego un punto importante que nos parece que para trabajar a nivel de cada ciudad y también como red, que es la promoción de la cultura de paz. La promoción de la cultura de paz a través de iniciativas de todo tipo, vinculadas a las características, a las voluntades, a los retos de cada una de las ciudades, ¿no? A través del arte, de los deportes o de cualquier herramienta se puede promover la cultura de paz. Y otro punto muy importante, todo ello colaborando con otras asociaciones y con otras redes que también trabajan en paz y en desarme. Sobre las contribuciones a la nueva agenda de paz de Naciones Unidas, a la propuesta de nueva agenda de paz, nos hemos focalizado en 5 recomendaciones porque es cierto que la agenda es una agenda y por lo tanto entendemos que todas las acciones tienen relación entre ellas y se fortalecen entre ellas, con lo cual posiblemente no se pueden trabajar una a una y de manera individual, pero en todo caso hemos focalizado en 5 de ellas y sobre todo también teniendo en cuenta y no olvidando que la aceleración en la implementación de la Agenda 2030 es una condición fundamental para alcanzar la agenda. Nos hemos focalizado en la acción 1, en la eliminación de las armas nucleares, porque de hecho es el objetivo principal de la red de alcaldes por la paz. Por lo tanto, esta es la contribución como enseña de la red, ¿no? Como pues a través de acciones de incidencia, acciones de diplomacia municipal, trabajando en red, trabajando con los organismos multilaterales y de hecho poco a poco se está avanzando en la agenda de la abolición nuclear, aunque hay muchos retos todavía para alcanzarla. En referente a la acción número 2 de fortalecer la diplomacia preventiva, nosotros creemos que a través del rol activo de los miembros, de los alcaldes, de las alcaldesas, pueden transmitir un mensaje muy potente, transmitiendo la experiencia de las personas que han sufrido las consecuencias de las armas nucleares, pero también de los test nucleares, ¿no? Existen muchas personas en el mundo que todavía están sufriendo las consecuencias de las bombas atómicas de Hiroshima y Nagasaki, pero también de todos los test que se han hecho a lo largo de los años del siglo XX. Sobre la acción 3, el cambio de paradigma, aquí sí que esto es un trabajo en el que los gobiernos locales, las redes, pero también la sociedad civil, las organizaciones de la sociedad civil y también la ciudadanía. Y aquí tenemos que trabajar desde abajo arriba para comprometernos, para que los ciudadanos, la ciudadanía participe y se comprometa en construir y desarrollar esta cultura de paz para alcanzar pues, los retos que hemos hablado antes. Además de políticas públicas de promoción, de resolución pacífica de conflictos, de mediación, otra campañas de incidencia para promover el conocimiento y el respeto de los derechos humanos y para promover también el desarme. La número 6, aquí sí que también me gustaría poner un acento entre los vínculos entre el clima, sobre todo, y la paz y la seguridad, llamando la atención sobre las consecuencias catastróficas que tienen para la humanidad y para el planeta todo lo que tiene relación con el desarrollo de armas nucleares, los test nucleares y también las consecuencias que tiene para los territorios, ¿no? Porque las consecuencias de una explosión nuclear o del uso de los test nucleares pues, permanecen en la Tierra y tienen consecuencias para las generaciones futuras. Y sobre la acción 7, reducir el coste humano de las armas, focalizándonos en la protección de la población civil o denunciando la utilización de armas explosivas en áreas pobladas, pero también focalizando en violencias en las ciudades. Hemos celebrado ya, creo que unas cuantas ediciones del Foro de Ciudades y Territorios de Paz. El último se celebró en Bogotá el año pasado. En estos foros vemos pues, ejemplos de políticas públicas para gestionar o para hacer frente a las violencias urbanas. Y siempre estamos viendo también que las soluciones vienen dadas por implementar políticas orientadas a los cuidados más que políticas de seguridad. Entonces, hacer frente a las violencias, ya sean directas, estructurales o culturales, pues sería en las ciudades también es un punto importante para reducir el coste humano de las armas. Sobre la contribución vinculada a los compromisos de la agenda común. Sobre el primero, de llamar la atención sobre no dejar a nadie, ninguna persona ni ningún territorio atrás, yo sí quería llamar la atención sobre reconocer el sufrimiento de las comunidades afectadas por las explosiones nucleares, las víctimas que existen no solamente en Japón, en zonas de todo el mundo que en sus territorios han hecho test nucleares y que están sufriendo ellos y sus familias las consecuencias, porque es un problema de salud que permanece varias generaciones, pero también los territorios y los territorios, la producción y traspaso a la cadena alimentaria, ¿no? La protección del planeta, esto vinculado muy claramente a las consecuencias del uso de las armas nucleares, que antes me he referido a ella, y llamando la atención sobre todo para vigilar, por estar atento para detener la contaminación radioactiva de la... Voy acabando, sí. De la contaminación debido a la contaminación radioactiva. Evidentemente, el número 3 es promover la paz y prevenir los conflictos. Antes hemos hablado, los anteriores ponentes se han referido a este punto. Yo creo que aquí es clave para los gobiernos locales y la herramienta de la cultura de paz, los programas educativos, los programas de memoria, los programas de mediación y resolución pacífica de conflictos y todas estas políticas son claves para conseguir este punto. Sobre el compromiso 4, queríamos hacer énfasis en la participación ciudadana y en los programas, en la participación y la co-creación de programas y en la transparencia y para promover pues, justamente la justicia. Y sobre el número 10, de promover los partenariados, evidentemente, que es lo que estamos haciendo ahora mismo y muy relevante, ofreciendo la voz también a otras, a través de nuestra red, a otros municipios que puedan acceder a los asuntos más globales también. Y el compromiso número 11, muy importante también, escuchar evidentemente, pero trabajar con los jóvenes. Los jóvenes, las personas jóvenes tienen otros lenguajes, utilizan otras herramientas. Entonces, yo creo que nosotros debemos esforzarnos para que se sientan incluidos y para incluirlos, pero dejando que ellos tengan la iniciativa, ¿no? Los jóvenes no son el futuro, también son el presente, ¿no? Y esto debemos tenerlo en cuenta. Stop here. José. Okay.
Gracias, Karma. Y perdona que tenga que ser tan insistente con el tiempo, pero vamos un poquito justos y nos quedan todavía bastantes participantes y cambiar de segmento. Así que, quisiera acabar dándoos las gracias. Voy a pasar al inglés para hacerlo más sencillo. I would like to thank all of the participants in the previous segment of contributions and for highlighting the importance of working together, of highlighting local initiatives for peace, of bringing together networks of local and regional governments to gain strength towards the international system and national governments. I would like to close this segment and invite my colleague Pablo Fernandez to introduce our In Focus segment and to carry on the debate from here. Thank you so much, Pablo. I hope you're able to do a better job than me in keeping time.
Thank you, Jose, and thank you, everyone. I will jump in with time to allow everyone to speak and to have this session. Now, here you see Agora, but we're going to start with the In Focus. And the reason to the In Focus is that we heard our contributions and we will try to link it with the international processes that we are hitting as constituency of local and regional governments, but as well with the international ecosystem that is having international intergovernmental negotiations and as well specific deliverables. And to frame this conversation, I want you to focus on the SDG 16 revision, the review of this specific target in this year's high-level political forum. As previously recalled, the new agenda for peace that comes from our common agenda from the UN Secretary General. And have in mind that in this our common agenda, we also have the advisory group on local and regional governments, which is already settled, and it's advising the Secretary General in a different type of engagement with our constituency. And why do I say this? It is because we will be developing with this advisory group a policy brief on ways of engagement in the ground. And to kind of lead the ways and to give inspiration to these ideas, in the In Focus session that as you know is where we invite an international partner to lead through international processes, we have Zoe Petler, who is a local governance specialist from the UNDP's Crisis Bureau. And she will have 5 minutes to lead us to these three, I'm sorry, Zoe, but we need to listen from others, to lead us to these three aspects, which is our work on the ground, what to expect for SDG 16, and the new agenda for peace. So the floor is yours. You have a presentation, and I will jump in if we are running out of time. Zoe, thank you very much. And I want to say that Zoe is the focal point of the co-convener of UCLG of the World Forum of Cities and Territories of Peace, which, as you know, is UNDP. Zoe, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Well, thank you so much, and good morning to everyone from New York. I've really enjoyed the session so far and the opportunity. I've been scribbling down many of the daring actions and suggestions and hoping that can also inform our work. I will try very hard to stick to the 5 minutes, but I just want to say first, thank you very much to the UCLG World Secretariat for the invitation today, just to reflect based on our own work across the world on our priorities for 2024 and also the particular entry points that we might suggest for that policy brief and for the actions to be taken forward by the local and regional government constituency. I'll be very brief in an introduction. I'm sure many of you know, particularly in the peace space, that UNDP is a development actor, the lead development agency for the UN. and therefore a key development actor in the conflict prevention and peace building system across the UN, not only in conflict settings, but also in the 170 countries in which we work. And what we're looking at here really is strengthening national and local capacities for recovering from and reducing conflict, preventing violence and conflict by addressing grievances, inequalities, and exclusion. And we cover a huge range of work, from prevention through governance and rule of law and justice institutions, preventing violent extremism, which we heard today, and mental health and psychosocial support, strengthening social cohesion through jobs and service delivery, gender equality and women's empowerment, and support to local capacities for conflict prevention. It's no understatement to say that much of this work goes on at the local level, where we agree that peaceful societies are forged. Next slide, please. I won't even attempt to go into detail here, but this is just a small review of the type of work we're talking about. In Lebanon, for example, for the past 10 years, support to municipalities for conflict-sensitive service delivery, jobs in areas where we see high levels of Syrian refugees and social tension between the groups. In circumstances like South Sudan and post-conflict and new societies, looking at how we can invest in community level and community bonding in situations where communities were previously torn apart. Next slide. In the Philippines, investing in insider mediators, specifically women insider mediators, as early warning systems for conflict and as crucial agents of local peace and development is something that we're really trying to prioritize. And then very briefly, a little comment on innovative approaches to peace or to peace tech, which we have building on years of work on citizen security data with municipalities, really trying to build out the innovation ecosystem for peace building, building on approaches that we find in cities anyway. Next slide. Just very briefly, on SDG 16, UNDP is a custodian agency for 5 of the indicators for SDG 16. If you didn't catch, in 2023, we launched the first Global Progress Report on SDG 16. And if you haven't reviewed it, I would strongly recommend that you do for entry points. You're all aware, of course, of the trends that we see around rising violence, around corruption, and increasing risks to human rights defenders and journalists. But I think one of the important points here was also around the need to invest in high quality and disaggregated data to even know what's going on at the local level and building that out to national understanding of peace. Certainly an entry point I think that we would encourage and hope to invest in with our local partners. Next slide. So just very briefly, a few perspectives from UNDP. From our work, I would say there's a really strong alignment for leading local peace approaches in all actions, so actions 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, under the recommendation area on preventing conflict and violence and sustaining peace. In our own priorities and our own advocacy, we really want to see a powerful local voice in some of the following areas. Enabling civic space and inclusion for local peace builders. This is a major priority for us and some work that we're doing with the EU in the coming year, in supporting local peace builders around the world, promoting grassroots-based peace building and local ownership of the sort in the Philippines example I gave before, and making sure that we promote the role of local communities and peace builders and the knowledge and legitimacy and the resource that they are in peace processes. It's something that we hope to invest in, the EU is investing in, and we hope to encourage other partners to do so as well. Similarly, a discussion we've heard around, a decrease in trust. There's just such an important role for the local community to play in enhancing the social contract and human security. And again, this is really a stress around inclusive local planning, conflict-sensitive service delivery, and creation of opportunities, and something that we aim to invest in. There's a huge role here also to play in local open governance and anti-corruption, and being able to signal a strong social contract to lay the foundation for peace. This is something that really lies in the hands of local and regional governments. It's really seen to do so across the international community. And I hope that advocacy planned for your next year can really try to create a platform for that. The new Agenda for Peace is also re-emphasizing the responsibility of member states to sustain peace domestically.
Sorry, 1 minute, please.
Okay, just to say we really stress an investment in local prevention infrastructure, looking at local peace platforms, early warning systems, and these kinds of mechanisms. And again, we would hope to work with you on that. And finally, around climate security, a huge priority for the international community and one which definitely lies in the local level. I won't go into it here, but I think there's a huge discussion to be had about local actors in the broader humanitarian development peace building nexus. And in 2024, we see a lot of priority around localization of humanitarian action, particularly with regards to displacement. This is something that I think it would be very smart to prioritize in any action agenda coming out of this meeting and the retreat, and something that we would be happy to support on. I'm sorry not to get through all of my slides, but I'd be happy to pick up this discussion with anyone here and really look forward to working with you as you move forward.
Thank you so much, Zoe. I'm sorry for the timing. I will react a bit to frame what you have said, which is a dedicated report to SDG 16. Our constituency will be feeding this through the local authorities major group coming to the HLPF, including the dedicated one on climate action. We will be producing as well as every year the HLPF localization report, which will include a paper on SDG 16, which will include all this data that you were mentioning. The emphasis on local infrastructure for peace, for us, this is public service delivery, and this will have also a session during the HLPF. As you know, UNDP is the former co-chair of the Local 2030 initiative, where through the GTF and UCLG, we are very active. And finally, we want to recall the call to action that was presented during the Global Refugees Forum this past December, which emphasizes on this aspect. And for us, this holistic approach is what we consider the building blocks for peace. So thank you so much, Zoe. We will try to put all the pieces together, but just give a bit of a briefing of what we are already doing in terms of what you have just said, with the special focus, of course, on climate and inequalities. Thank you so much, Zoe. And colleagues, we're going now to the more interactive part of this. The session will go a bit longer, so thank you for staying with us. We have many politicians in the room, and we have many other partners who are going to participate. Allow me to start this agora and to start asking directly the question, what are those building blocks for peace, and what we need to consider in order to build up the agenda and react to the contributions that we heard. And for this, I am very pleased to invite our very first speaker before opening the floor, who is the governor of Kisumu in Kenya. He's part of the advisory group on local and regional governments. He's an active member of UCLG and UCLG Africa. So Governor, welcome, and the floor is yours, sir. I'm so sorry, but I will have to flag you when we are running out of time, but please address our audience. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Chair. Well, I was really enjoying all this, really. There's a lot of information to get and to take home. And I have very little to say except to appreciate what everybody has said on this subject. But let me say about 3 or 4 things. One, that there seems to be a tension usually between national or central governments and local governments, especially over resources. In Kenya, we have a constitution that says we have 48 governments in the Republic of Kenya, 47 devolved governments, and 1 national government, separate but interdependent. And usually that interdependence is demonstrated in the way national resources or finances are used by these local government or devolved government and the national government. The constitution says very clearly how that should be done, but it is not usually done like this, that. And that happens in many federal or countries with local government, in the sense that we know that local governments are where the rubber touches the ground. Usually local governments or regional government or state governments are the ones which perform the functions that really matter to the people: health, education, infrastructure, and all that. And it's the local authorities that somebody feels first before you feel the other distant national government. So they need to have resources. Quite often there is conflict at the local level because of the scarcity of resources for local governments to deliver their responsibilities. Secondly, when it comes to the values that we have proposed today about things that we need to promote peace internationally and locally: political tolerance, ethnic tolerance, religious tolerance, racial tolerance, trust and trust dividends, and so on, it would be good if at the global level, local authorities or leaders of local governments have access to international organizations and peace-building institutions at the global level, very liberally. It's quite often is only when we come to meetings like these, really, that we get to know what is happening in other countries, that we get to know what the concern of certain global institutions like the UN is. We are lucky now that the Secretary General has allowed us, really, and the UN General Assembly has accepted that those of us who represent local authorities should have an entree point to express those views from the grounds to the UN. I think that's a good move that will open a lot of opportunities for discussion, for knowing what to do, especially on the issue of peace. Then there's the issue of equal access to hearings before global institutions that pursue conflict resolution. Usually this access is enjoyed largely by national government and certain international organizations. And I think if you want to know what the municipality of Kisii, for example, in our country, would know or feel strongly about a certain international issue, they will have to go to the national government. But by the time it goes to the national government, maybe the message is changed. It's not represented as well as it could be from the voice that could come from the local setting. The other issue, I think, which is very important, is controlling misinformation in conflict situations. I think social media has done us a lot of good and a lot of bad. Quite often, conflicts are caused because of misinformation. I know it because here in Kenya, we had a very highly centralized government. As a result of a lot of struggles, we got a very liberal constitution in 2010 that brought in local government strong aspects in governance. But nonetheless, what happens at a local level, because local governments are not very strong in controlling information or giving information, is quite often misrepresented, and misinformation can cause conflict, especially over resources. If you look at a place like Sudan, I have done some work in Sudan, and I lived in Sudan, South Sudan for some time, not very long. And I know that some of those conflicts in South Sudan or in Sudan are caused by misinformation that causes conflict. This happens in many places, really. And now with a highly volatile, highly accessible information at the international level, we may find that by the time a conflict is started, it is started for the very wrong reasons. So I think it's institutions like this I see in front of me. I think you people are doing a very good work. The issue of information, the issue of mass education, the issue of access to information, the issue of interpretation of information is very important. Unfortunately, not all of us can control information channels, but at least it should be open to discussion, and certain standards and values should be signed to by some of the powerful information networks like BBC, Al Jazeera, and so on, because people didn't listen to them and believe what they say. So organizations like these can help come up with certain values, certain standards that international organizations or international institutions that control information can do. For example, finally, when conflict is being sorted out or when people come to the table to discuss, I think there should be a form of reward for people who promote conflict resolution through discourse, through putting the arms down and coming to discuss something genuinely. and not hypocritically. And in that regard, I've seen that there's an international award for peace builders. I've rarely seen awards for peace builders that promote well, I can't remember the English word, but coming together voluntarily or encouraging people to come together and discuss an issue that is very important and that is very conflictual and that separates people, but somebody is brave enough to say, let us sit down and talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Governor. And I would like to flag again that you are part of this advisory group of local and regional governments to the United Nations Secretary General that you were referring. And allow me to link the points that you have said with the Future Envisioning Exercises entry points that we were presenting in the past spring, which is protecting the commons, that has to do with the first respondents that you were saying, rebuilding trust, which has to do as well with the misinformation side of conflict that you were referring, the access to a different type of economy, which has to do with the interdependency, but as well with the resources, and finally, a new multilateralism, which is access of our constituency to the intergovernmental processes. So we agree with all your points, Governor, and this is something that you and our leadership, together with other 14 local and regional governments, had brought to the United Nations General Assembly through the Secretary General. Thank you very much, Governor. Colleagues, I will ask you to raise your hands and we will go through the list of your hands. First, I'm going to the Mayor of Cuenca, Mr. Cristian Zamora, who is here with us, and I want to flag the importance that we have for intermediary cities, including Kisumu, but as well Cuenca and others that are here. And to flag that intermediary cities are the territories that has been identified by the United Nations Population Fund as the places where big transformation needs to happen. Así que, alcalde, bienvenido, muchas gracias por estar con nosotros. A usted la palabra, tiene 3 minutos y voy a tener que ser estricto con el tiempo. Bienvenido, alcalde.
Thank you very much. I would like to greet everyone in the room. I greet from Cuenca, Ecuador, South America, and in this context of building blocks of peace, as you may know, our country is unfortunately going prison crisis, and that's been worldwide known. Last week, we have a lot of problems in our prisons, and it is a topic that we have to address because that has to deal with peace. My country, it's never been in a situation like this before. This happened a few days ago, and our city also has a prison, and we had problems here. And I would like to address some things that what we have done in this situation. First of all, the context you already know. And I would like to point out something that happened in our city, and that I think it is a key thing to put it forward, because we have 3 different type of governmental levels at basic level in the country. You know, the national government, the province local government, and also the city local government. The city local government has the more political power in terms of political issues in the city. And what we did, and it was the only example of city in the country, is we sat together, the governor, the prefecto, which is the in charge of the province, and also the mayor, myself. And we put aside every single thing that is not thinking in the country, the city, and the peace. And I mean by this, not political discrepancies, because we all 3 belong to different political parties. And we came together to a single table with all the institutions because we believed one thing. We all together have all the competences that the government has. And if we make decisions together, and we deal with all the discussion and the situation of crisis that we lived last week, and we take all these decisions together, we were able to come together, all of us, and that's what made the city only to be stroke the first day that we have some explosions in the city. The rest of the days, while the country was, of course, having all these attacks, we put control under the city because we all articulated at the same time. And I think that's a good thing that, of course, it's a good example to build blocks of peace and deal with crisis like we did. And also, I would like to, because of the time, something that happened in our city, and we put all the egos aside, well, the political issues aside, because if we want to block bills of peace, we have to focus on the main thing that is the country, the city, and the peace itself for the people. And we as politicians took all the other things besides, as I would underline that again, and put the decision making together and be able to sit in a single table, all of us, to make the decisions together. And I, because of the 3 minutes that you, Gente, allowed me, I think that's the most important thing that we can share with you. If you may happen, of course, maybe not, but if someday that happens in your cities and in your countries, I think that's a good way to come through this crisis, because that unites the city. And the second thing, very briefly, you have to communicate every single instant and second of what's going on to your people. Put your face in the media and tell them what's happening, if it is good and if it is bad. And if it is bad, you have to tell them what's going on. And you have to tell them what's the things that you are making in the decisions in the right moment. And that brings peace to the people. And seeing all the authorities together and telling the people the truth twice, 3 times, 4 times a day of what we are doing, that brought peace to our city. And of course, all the people united and giving the support back to the authorities. That's the thing that I would like to share with you all.
Thank you very much, Mayor. And this is actually a live learning experience with you, having the relevance of your experience day to day. We have Zoe from the Crisis Bureau of UNDP that this leads with it. And just to let you know that we are working together with UN Habitat to peer review the UN system-wide guidelines for safer cities. Which is a UN system way of systematizing what you have been explaining, Mayor. So thank you very much for this. And again, having everyone in the table and the communication aspect that at the beginning of the session during the consultation, this was flagged. Allow me now to go to United Cities and local governments in MEWA with Mr. Mehmet Duman, who is the Secretary General of UCLG MEWA, from a different region and his perspective. Mr. Duman, the floor is yours, and thank you, sir. Welcome.
Thank you, Pablo. Distinguished city leaders, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for gathering here today to discuss the crucial role of local and regional governments in shaping a future of peace. As the Secretary General of UCLG MEWA, I address you with a profound sense of urgency, recognizing the pressing need for peace in our region in the Middle East and West Asia. In our journey of envisioning a better future, we cannot turn a blind eye to the ongoing humanitarian crisis, particularly the heart-wrenching situation in Palestine. The need for immediate action is evident, and as leaders of local and regional governments, we bear a unique responsibility. Our cities and territories are not isolated from the global challenges. The conflicts and tensions in Palestine have consequences that extend far beyond its borders. The ongoing conflict in Syria, which began in 2011, has not only had devastating effects on the country itself, but has caused a massive human flow to neighboring countries like Turkey, Lebanon, and Jordan. Turkey stands today as the largest refugee hosting country globally, and Lebanon, based on its population, holds the same unfortunate title. Moreover, we must acknowledge how conflicts ripple through cities and affect local populations. Take Amman as an example, where more than 60% of the city's population has Palestinian roots. Today, as we reflect on the pressing crisis in Yemen, Iraq, and Afghanistan, one word echoes: peace and freedom. These regions bear witness to the urgent need for solution. In this collective call for peace, cities play a pivotal role in the peace-building process. Amidst pressing challenges, our cities and local governments have exemplified remarkable solidarity with those affected by conflicts. As we navigate the path towards the summit of the future, it's imperative that we remain aware of the tangible impact these conflicts have on our communities. Within the UCLG MEWA family, we harbor immense confidence in the relationship of Fatma Shahin, the mayor of Gaziantep, and Yusuf El Shawarbe, the mayor of Amman. Their invaluable roles extend beyond our localities. They stand as beacons articulating the realities of our region in the discussions of the United Secretary General's Advisory Group on Local and Regional Governments preceding the Summit of the Future. In this collective effort, we also place our trust in the mayor of Balıkesir, Yücel Yılmaz, the ambassador of the government, pillar of the UCLG Pact for the Future. Their insights and advocacy will undoubtedly shed light on the challenges faced by our communities, ensuring that the voices of our region resonate strongly in these crucial deliberations. In conclusion, let our commitment to international peace and security be more than words. The urgency is not just a call, it's a plea for a better future. Together, as leaders committed to peace, let us make our voices heard and work towards a world where peace prevails not only within our borders, but across our global community. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Duman. As you know, the World Organization has been very sensitive and has been following the situation that you were referring in your region. And together with the mayors of Amman and Gaziantep, all women of the UCLG presidency are part of this advisory group on local and regional governments. Mayors of Rabat, governor of Nouakchott, the governor of Pichincha, the mayor of Paris, and they all represent the whole of our constituency. So we can all count on this sensitiveness and this leadership. Thank you very much, Mr. Duman. Colleagues, the floor is now open. I know that Representative Marta from the Barcelona Center for International Affairs was raising her hand. So I will go with her. I will later go with Sfax, and please feel free to start raising your hands. So Marta, the floor is yours. Thank you for joining us. Having Sidov here for us is crucial. Welcome.
Thank you very much, and thank you to all the interventions. It was a very insightful session. So thank you also to UCLG for inviting CEDAW. I'll be very brief. I just wanted to reflect first of all on what is peace, and bring to your attention that actually peace comes from like the original Latin word for peace is pact, which means pact, meaning that an agreement, right, or a promise between at least two parties. The idea is whenever two parties shake hands, then it's very unlikely that they go to war. And I was thinking that this idea of the pact for the future of humanity, at the end, it can also be read as a peace for the future of humanity. And in this sense, I was connecting that with what Councillor Carola Gunnarsson was saying regarding the idea that without peace, actually there is nothing, right? So peace is an essential really requisite for life. This is why it's so important that we are here today. Now, responding to the question of how can local governments leverage their peace-building potential or abilities, right, to influence the global conversation, speaking from the perspective of an international relations think tank, I think it's important to realize that the concept of peace and security have many dimensions, many possible understandings. So we need to be very specific when we talk about peace. And we need to be specific also when we talk about peace in the context of United Nations. So when United Nations talks about peace, they employ a wide variety of concepts like conflict prevention, peacekeeping, peacemaking, and all these concepts are not the same. So when we are saying that we want to get local governments more involved in the UN nations efforts to establish peace, what exactly are we talking about? I think we need to be specific about that. Also, we need to realize that the concept of peace and security has evolved. So when the UN was created 80 years ago, nobody was talking, for instance, about human security. And human security is precisely, when I was listening to most of the interventions in today's session, all of them, I would say, they refer to dimensions that had to do with human security, this idea of economic security, food security, social security, or peace. We can frame it differently. So we need to ask what dimensions of peace are local and regional governments more interested in, and another concept that emerged in today's conversation is this idea of sustainable peace. Here, I think it's where the added value of local governments really lies. So we need to, my advice here would be bring into the global conversation this idea that we really need to address the deep rooted causes of conflict, some of which have to do precisely with urban violence that had already also been discussed in this session. These deep causes of violence, for instance, had to do with socioeconomic inequalities, poverty, social exclusion, lack of opportunities. And how can we do that? Through promotion of economic inclusion, education for peace, peace culture, gender equality, access to justice, citizen participation. I think in all those concepts that had already been put forward in this session is really where I think you need to focus your advocacy efforts. I want to be brief. I just leave here this reflection. Be specific. Be aware, of the terminology that the UN is employing when discussing peace.
Thank you very much, Marta. And a bit of trying to answer the specificity and avoiding the definitions that you are referring from our constituency, the roadmap is already clear. For this, we have to prepare a policy brief on how to engage specifically in different regions, and this will come for the different contexts through the UN resident coordinators, and this means humanitarian and, of course, the safer cities concept that you were referring later as sustainable peace, which we are trying to change a bit. But in the end, we cannot forget that we are a political voice and that we are representing political actors within intergovernmental negotiations. So the political consensus of what local and regional governments are bringing to the intergovernmental negotiations is still powerful, and the union that our organizations and the GTF represent still valid in terms of how to do it. But points taken in terms of the specificity needed, and this is the work that we will be doing from now to the summit of the future, with specifically the policy brief that will be deliverable number 3. Thank you very much, Marta, and we invite you as well to keep this discussion during our retreat, because we will be organizing the second round of this Future Envisioning exercise. So I have the mayor of Soria, Carlos Martinez, UCLG Special Envoy. I have the Secretary General of UCLG Africa, Mr. Jean-Pierre Elong-Embassi, and from SFAX as well. I will now go with Mayor Carlos Martinez, alcalde bienvenido, enviado especial, y parte de la presidencia ampliada de CGLU. A usted la palabra.
Buenas tardes a todos y a todos. Muchísimas gracias, Pablo, por darme esta oportunidad en la que lo primero que tengo que hacer es agradecer, ¿no?, la convocatoria de esta sesión, porque es absolutamente necesario, ¿no? Lo que estamos viviendo, y todos los anteriores intervinientes lo han puesto encima de la mesa, un contexto geopolítico internacional absolutamente terrible, ¿no?, en el que es verdad que todos queremos mirar con un punto de vista optimista y de luz y de esperanza el futuro inmediato, pero desde la absoluta realidad todos sufrimos la impotencia, la incertidumbre, como ha definido mi amigo Emilio Jatón en su intervención, en la situación que todos estamos atravesando, ¿no? He escuchado con muchísimo interés todas las intervenciones, ¿no?, porque creo que, insisto, era absolutamente necesario el desarrollo de esta sesión, ¿no? Y al final yo creo que tenemos que ser conscientes, plenamente conscientes, ¿no?, que estamos en una revolución política internacional. Una revolución política que es un cambio de paradigma claro de este contexto, de este orden internacional, que tenemos que intentar saber descifrar, saber leer de la forma más adecuada, para que el cambio de paradigma no suponga una involución democrática, una involución en recorte de derechos y libertades, sino que pueda suponer precisamente, ¿no?, un despeje definitivo y rotundo de la ampliación de la democracia como fórmula de gobernanza a nivel internacional válida, un nuevo cambio de paradigma en las estructuras de gobernanza internacional en que los gobiernos locales tenemos que ser una pieza fundamental y clave, un cambio de paradigma que suponga la ampliación de los derechos y libertades y no todo lo contrario. Porque creo que en esta situación estamos, ¿no? Todas las revoluciones políticas, como decía Thomas Kahn, ese famoso científico y escritor de los años 60-70 estadounidense, hablaba de que todas las revoluciones políticas o los cambios de paradigma se dan cuando las instituciones no somos capaces de dar respuesta a las demandas, a los problemas y a las necesidades que tiene la ciudadanía. Y hoy estamos en esa coyuntura. La cuestión es de qué forma vamos a responder a ese cambio de paradigma que hoy ya se está dando, si es hacia mayor igualdad, mayores derechos, una gobernanza más horizontal y mucho más democrática, o todo lo contrario. Y yo creo que lo que tenemos que intentar desarrollar y el esfuerzo que tenemos que hacer los gobiernos locales para construir esa paz, para crear esa paz realmente, es intentar tejer ese ODS 16, que se ha nombrado también, en esa red de ciudades por la paz, una red de alianzas que desde un punto de vista político, social y económico compartan los ideales de avanzar ese cambio de paradigma en beneficio de la gran parte de la ciudadanía, que se alíe también con partes de la sociedad, de la cultura y de la educación, que es absolutamente clave para poder seguir generando y construyendo la paz y construyendo ciudades en igualdad, que reúna los liderazgos sociales, que reúna los liderazgos culturales, que se apuntale también en los valores del deporte y de la cultura como unas piezas claves y fundamentales, y que intentemos pasar definitivamente a la acción, generando un movimiento de movilización y de denuncia lo suficientemente capaz de hacer frente a ese movimiento internacional ultraliberal que se está dando a nivel internacional y que de alguna forma nos ha pillado a contrapié a aquellos que una vez pensamos, seguramente de forma utópica, que los derechos y las libertades que habíamos conseguido durante tanto esfuerzo en el siglo XX y principios del siglo XXI no tenían retroceso. Y creo que en ese sentido tenemos que ser conscientes de lo que tenemos encima de la mesa y de que no todos, ni en todos los sitios, son nuestros aliados. Y por tanto, creo que esas palabras que habéis preguntado en la primera de las preguntas del metraje no sé cómo le habéis llamado, ¿no?, en el que se hablaba de voluntad política, se hablaba de empatía, se hablaba de diálogo, se hablaba de educación y se hablaba de política con mayúsculas, lo que subyace al final es ese eterno y permanente conflicto de intereses entre los de arriba y los de abajo, los que tienen asegurada una educación, una sanidad, una protección social, y quienes aspiran a tenerlo. Y esa revolución, por un lado o por otro, se está produciendo. Y esa revolución política, las instituciones tenemos que intentar darle respuesta, porque el cambio de paradigma lo tenemos aquí ya, al menos bajo mi punto de vista, ¿no? Ese cambio de paradigma la tenemos que decidir si somos una mayoría suficiente como para que vaya hacia adelante en progreso o hacia una evolución a una ley del más fuerte de la jungla que tanto daño ha hecho en el pasado a nivel internacional, ¿no? Y ahí creo que tenemos que hacer mucho los gobiernos locales, y me ha encantado hoy, y ya acabo con esto, ¿no?, de Red de Ciudades por la Paz, ¿no?, cuando ha hablado de forma tan rotunda y tan clara de la pieza fundamental que supone la movilización, ¿no?, que los gobiernos locales estemos activos. Te lo agradezco de verdad esas palabras, porque creo que los mayores aliados que hoy tiene el multilateralismo a nivel internacional, precisamente, somos las estructuras locales que vivimos a pie de calle y que somos capaces que con acciones concretas poder abordar la desigualdad en nuestras sociedades en lo más cercano, como decía también Emilio Jatón y algunos de los intervinientes, pero también con una perspectiva global, como estamos viendo a través de la red internacional que nos acoge, que es CGLU, ¿no? Yo ya me callo, que seguramente me he alargado más de la cuenta, y perdona, Pablo.
No pasa nada. Gracias, alcalde. Muchas gracias. Ampliar la democracia es lo que consideramos como la nueva generación de derechos, los nuevos esenciales, y esto en la lógica de los comunes. And the convening power that both our membership has, but as well our international municipal movement, the convening power of the movement. Colleagues, I will have to be very strict with time. We are 24 minutes over time. So, Mr. Elonge Bassi, Secretary General of UCLG Africa, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you for warning me to be short. I will try. First of all, congratulations for this. And this is overdue. And I know that it is not easy for local governments and subnational regional governments to intervene in an area which is confiscated, let's say, by the national level and the international organization. But as the closest representative of the people, we have no choice but to have our voice heard when people are in danger. So this is very important that we express, not only we voice our case, but also we express the way we want to see this path for the future. And I thank very much to Marta to have reminded us that the path for the future of humanity can also be read as the peace for the future of humanity. And it's very critical that we keep this in mind. And we should be the custodian of peace building across the world. And for this to be, we should not be afraid of having clear positions, like Dumaine was mentioning. We have huge conflict ongoing. And I remember in past life, we succeeded during the war between Israel and the Arab countries. We succeeded to have Palestinian mayors and Israeli mayors sitting. This we did, so we can do again. This is a call to go beyond words and beyond declaration and to try and get the solidarity of local government in actions. Number two, in the African context, we have an architecture of peace building at the African Union level. We asked for UCLG Africa to join this architecture so that local governments are part and parcel of any endeavor on conflict prevention, conflict resolution, post-conflict situation, and peace building as well. We think it is not wrong to go to the Security Council and say to them, please, we need such a position at the UN system. I don't have the right to vote, but I have the right to be listened to. And this we can ask, because now we have a conduit towards the Secretary General. So let's ask this. And I really commend the work that's been done by UCLG in this regard with our political forum that we have put in place and with the Global Task Force. We have a leverage here. Please, let's use it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Embassy, and we will praise the idea that you have said, which is the right to be listened, and the mechanism that we have is the Global Task Force. I want to recall the values that 120 years ago, the first gathering of the municipal movement enshrined, which remain the same, which is peace, democracy, and solidarity. We are still talking about the same, but we are still united, and this is something that we have to praise. Thank you very much, Mr. Embassy. Allow me now to go to Mr. Wadji from Sfax in Tunis. Sir, à vous la parole, Monsieur Wadji. Colleagues, I think he has a problem with his connection, so now I will go to Simone Giobetti from CUF, and finally to Fabiana Goyeneche from Montevideo City, who will be the host of our forum in 2025. Simone from CUF, very briefly, the floor is yours.
Briefly. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. Vraiment rapide. Deux suggestions. Je crois que, il serait bien qu'on essaie d'avoir une initiative forte liée à la diplomatie des villes. C'est une suggestion, c'est une proposition plutôt. Faudrait que c'est le moment où il faut effectivement réaffirmer nos valeurs, comme tout le rappel, et une initiative de ce type. Je crois que c'est intéressante à organiser, comme disait Emilia, dans quel cas de s'inscrire si le sommet pour le futur ne prévoit pas l'espace que nous demandons autour de ces questions. Donc, je crois qu'il serait temps de revenir un peu à le rôle des collectivités locales dans la promotion de la paix et du dialogue avec une initiative liée à la diplomatie des villes. Et enfin, les droits internationaux restent quand même aussi un enjeu important pour le système entier, et je trouverais intéressant que ces élus et ces membres puissent réaffirmer davantage le respect des droits internationaux comme étant les fondements des relations entre nous-mêmes. Merci.
Thank you so much, Simone. And yes, the Summit of the Future is our first. Our Summit of the Future is our first deadline for this year. But please have in mind that we have the World Social Summit coming in 2025, where all these messages can land in a systematic way and will build the future that our leadership is taking about in a different way of going about politics, including the international system and respecting the actual rules, but trying to transform the system. Thank you so much, Simone. Finally, this is the last intervention from the floor, and then later I will yield the floor to our Secretary General. But Fabiana is the Director of International Relations of Montevideo, and she will be hosting our World Forum of Cities and Territories of Peace. Fabiana, a ti la palabra.
Muchas gracias, Pablo. Buenos días, buenas tardes, buenas noches, queridas y queridos colegas. Sé que estamos con poco tiempo, así que procuraré ser muy breve. Pero quería hacer solo 3 señalamientos después de una jornada sumamente enriquecedora y que permite ir profundizando este aporte que los gobiernos locales tenemos para hacer en la construcción de paz, y que es definitivamente fundamental y esencial para poder transformar los tiempos que estamos viviendo y la calidad de vida de las personas que habitan y transitan por nuestras ciudades. Creo que hay 2 temas que han quedado sumamente claros. Por un lado, la importancia de una transformación radical del sistema multilateral, específicamente de elevar el nivel de participación y de integración por parte de los gobiernos locales en el sistema multilateral y específicamente en las Naciones Unidas. En eso se ha nombrado ya en reiteradas ocasiones el grupo asesor del secretario general sobre los gobiernos locales, de los cuales la intendenta Carolina Cosa, intendenta de Montevideo, forma parte, por lo cual tengo el gusto y la responsabilidad de ser Sherpa, y que creo que está haciendo un gran trabajo y que tenemos que como comunidad y como colectivo de gobiernos locales poder no solamente aportar nuestro punto de vista a este grupo asesor, sino también apoyarlo en el trabajo en términos de incidencia en el sistema de Naciones Unidas, en nuestros propios gobiernos locales, pero también de forma multinivel, es decir, la incidencia en los otros espacios que a nivel nacional y regional nosotros ocupamos. Y un momento clave sin duda será la Cumbre del Futuro en septiembre de este año, en la que realmente tenemos una expectativa de que emerjan de esa cumbre definiciones específicas en cuanto a avanzar. Ya estamos en tiempos de estar en la mesa con una participación activa e incidiendo en los temas de los cuales los gobiernos locales nos ocupamos todos los días, porque no es que estamos pidiendo empezar a trabajar por la paz, sino que estamos pidiendo un reconocimiento y reclamando un reconocimiento de la legitimidad que los gobiernos locales ya tienen en la construcción y en este trabajo por la paz. Y el otro punto es que sin duda una muestra de este compromiso y de este trabajo que los gobiernos locales hacemos por la paz, tiene que ver precisamente con el derrotero que ha recorrido nuestro Foro de Ciudades y Territorios de Paz, que se ha celebrado la última vez el año pasado en la ciudad de Bogotá, y que Montevideo tendrá el honor de ser la próxima sede, la próxima ciudad anfitriona en el año 2025. Este foro es una clara muestra de la gran contribución que hacemos, porque también los gobiernos locales aportamos a la construcción de la paz y al sostén de la paz cuando promovemos la convivencia, cuando luchamos contra la xenofobia, la discriminación, el racismo, el antisemitismo, la islamofobia, la violencia basada en género, tantos temas que tienen una enorme expresión en los espacios públicos, que son el escenario por excelencia donde la convivencia se vive y donde los gobiernos locales tienen un enorme trabajo y una gran responsabilidad. Entonces, con estas dos observaciones, y con esto voy cerrando porque me comprometí a la brevedad, en todo caso, dejar como síntesis o también como invitación en que nuestro camino hacia la cumbre, hacia el futuro de septiembre de este año, nuestro camino hacia el Foro de Ciudades y Territorios de Paz, sea eso, sea un proceso, no lo veamos como un objetivo, como un fin en sí mismo, como una fecha o un hito para el que nos estamos preparando, sino como distintas etapas de un proceso que estamos recorriendo, que tenemos que, sin duda, darle un impulso muy importante en nuestro próximo retiro el mes que viene, pero también seguir transitando por esta construcción de agenda y por esta incidencia que es sumamente importante y sin duda urgente para cambiar y transformar las vidas de las personas. Muchas gracias.
Gracias, Fabiana, and thank you very much for reminding us of the process that we are kicking off today. As you know, the Future Envisioning Exercises are this type of discussions between our leadership, the policy councils, our town hall, and our partners to kick off discussions and to build the agenda that we will be bringing forward for the coming years. So thank you very much, and thank you for putting in the roadmap that we have the Summit of the Future, of course, in September. Before this, the HLPF, the SDG 16 review, both at national but as well at local level. The GTF will be leading this. And then we will go to different processes such as the World Social Summit and the World Urban Forum. So thank you very much, everyone, in this Agora. Emilia, we are really late, but we wanted to give the floor to everyone. So thank you very much. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Pablo. Well done. And I mean, I think it is worth it. I think it is worth being late and still use this time together. We had many more participants than we thought, many more politicians that we had envisaged to have at the beginning. I'm really happy that we took this step, even if we thought, well, it's a tough way to start the year with with the building blocks for peace. But as you have all signaled, and in particular our political leaders and the colleagues at the sections, it is very much part of our DNA. It is very much part of the role that cities over 100 years ago, cities, territories, local governments saw themselves playing in the future for humanity. And we take this seriously, and we have now managed to forge some paths that allow us to provide inputs. What we are trying with this future envisioning exercise is to organize these thoughts and to make sure that all of these very important things that are being done will not only land in briefings that will be read at international level, but that it will also impact what is happening at a local level. And my hope is that they will shift the narrative, they will change the type of conversation that we are having about the day-to-day conflicts at a neighborhood level, but also those bigger conflicts that my colleagues from UCLG MEWA, UCLG Africa, and also the members of the presidency have raised. Indeed, our municipal movement emerged from the peace movement, and it emerged after the Great Wars as a very critical instrument to contain conflict and to show the path for a peaceful future. Our ambitions back then was also to provide that kind of global governance very close to the people, where the people would have a very strong voice in shaping the way they wanted to live. I think that the context at that time, in 1913, when we first met as movement, was not the context that we had today. It was extremely difficult, just as difficult, but we were not as well organized. Our community of local and regional government was not as strong as we have it today. Our ties with the rest of civil society were not as strong as the ones that we are demonstrating today. And I am convinced that we will be able to contain the negative discussions that are taking place, and that we will be able to also differentiate ourselves from the general interest and general trends of powers that are now very, very involved in conflicts, and not always from the perspective of the people that they represent. And so with that very strong responsibility and conscious that we need to redefine what our joint humanity means, we look forward to continue building with you, building on your legacies, and constructing a new one together. We look forward to welcoming you in our retreat, but above all, ensuring that all of your ideas, that your inputs do land in places where we make a difference, where a change can be made. Acting for the future of humanity is the power that unites us. We are still united. And in that spirit, we look forward to seeing you at the UCLG retreat from the 19th of February on. Looking forward to meeting you there and continue this journey. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you. Bye. Keep the spirits up. Bye.